Hey guys, welcome to our spoilers review of Salem's Lot, a book that surprised the hell out of both of us.
Okay, so last summer, before the It movie came out, I decided that I was going to read It by Stephen King, and it is like over 1,000 pages. It took me 4 months. I carried that book around with me everywhere. When I finally finished the book, I went through separation anxiety. And so when I suggested we read Salem's Lot, I was just like, man, I am in this for the long haul. Gotta read this pretty early because it's gonna take a lot of time. I did it in 2.5 days.
I mean, I took a little longer. I had a bit of more interrupted reading, but like it wasn't difficult by any means. There was no point where I was like, oh, this is a slog. I've never read Stephen King before. I've apparently read very little from like the 1950s to the 1990s. So I was actually super surprised about how much I liked it. I've always been kind of like, Stephen King, is he as good as everybody says he is? The answer is yes.
So Salem's Lot is surprising because it's very much old school vampire. All of the rules, like can't go into the house without being invited, don't see the reflection in the mirror.
And it's funny enough, the vampire is very susceptible to the Catholic, you know, signs of the cross, holy wafers, communion, God. And I'm just like, I just found myself just going down this rabbit hole of would any religion work? Or
I think so, because later on when Callahan confronts him and screws up in his confrontation, like the vampire is just like, if you had kept your faith and not kept your faith in the object of the cross, like, you know, your faith, you would have stopped me. So that makes me think, you know, it's just the faith itself. It's not the...
Because it reminds me very much of you have to almost dispose of supernatural creatures in the culture that they were brought up in. Like, but I don't know, it was just very interesting.
It reminded me of the opening of the reboot of Fright Night. What's his face is in the pool with Jerry. The basic story, it's very similar to Bram Stoker's Dracula, where invading vampire entity comes in and group of characters must band together to defeat said vampire, and each character in the main group has some kind of specific skill or knowledge or
like drive.
The difference in this book is that it just all goes to hell. In the edition we both read Stephen King. He wrote this in, I think, early 90s about like revisiting Salem's Lot, and in the thing he's like, yeah, you know, when I was writing this I was trying to find a way to blend old school Bram Stoker Dracula with like the weird comic, like gory crazy vampires, and you know what, I kind of wanted my vampires to win, but when I was writing it, like my characters surprised me and so they won and the vampire lost, and I'm just like, cool story, bro. And then I started reading this book and the vampire plot just like steamrolled through this town, and I was just like, there is no way that these characters are gonna come back from this.
Like, there's saving this town, okay?
No, like this town is gone. Like, it is a ghost town. And the book opens with 2 of the characters in Mexico being like, I guess we have to go back to Salem's Lot now.
And he's like reading newspaper clippings, and there's like 1 or 2 people who have like comments about, or just have been found, but pretty much everybody else in this town has disappeared. And so the writers of the articles are like, oh, that's so weird. I mean, they probably all just ran off, but like, it's so weird.
You know, American towns, like, businesses dry up and everyone like leaves.
In your head you're going like, okay, so did everyone actually die? Like, there must be some twist,
and then,
right?
like, you finally get to the events with the vampire, because then it goes through the main story and like it is going to shit, and you're just like,
oh no, nobody's getting out of this.
Nobody's getting out, and it's just, you keep thinking like, maybe, you know, maybe this person who owns the cafe, maybe they're making it out. Like, you start being like, okay,
just this one.
Who is still alive?
Yeah, pretty much no one makes it out. I'm sorry, guys.
It is dark.
You get like 2.
So our main group of characters, you have Ben Mears, who is the traditional Stephen King character of a writer, and he's returning to Salem's Lot, where he spent a few years as a child, because there was this house that he had this big creepy supernatural experience in that he might have like not actually have, but it's been like weighing on his mind, and he's like, yes, I'm going to go back to this town and I'm gonna write a book about this house and it's gonna get me a bunch of money. Like, I'm writing a bestseller, I am selling out, it's gonna be great.
Now the thing about this house is that it is a very, very old house. It's been around in town for probably hundreds of years, actually, you find out in later spin-off, sequel, short stories. Anyways, in the town's memory, there was this house, and it's called the Marston House, and in that house in the early 1920s lived this gangster and his wife, who lived up there and basically kept to themselves, but clearly the guy, you know, was into some dirty shit back where he lived.
Yeah, everybody's like, oh yeah, he worked like, he had a shipping company, but you find out he was a hitman.
Yeah, killed a lot of people.
Yeah.
On top of that, in the time when they were living up there, a couple of children disappeared. Is it connected to him? Is it not? Who knows? It's implied that he was doing satanic rituals, but like, what was the purpose of them? No one ever tells you.
And like one day he just kills his wife and hangs himself.
And people are like, what the hell?
It becomes this kind of blotch on the town, just like a site of evil, and everybody just kind of ignores it. The house goes to shambles, nobody lives there, it just kind of sits there watching down on the town, and at the very beginning of the book, there's a quote from Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House, and The Haunting of Hill House kind of really, like, inspired this book in an unexpected way. That was kind of cool to, like, see, and, like, later on in the story, like, Ben quotes Shirley Jackson, and I'm like, this is kind of cool, seeing as I just watched that show, like, a month ago.
The vampire Kurt Barlow comes to town, but he has been planning for this shit for a long time. He is ahead of the game, and basically he's won before people even know there is a game. He, like, infects the right people that just, like, creates this snowball effect.
It kind of reminded me of The Strain, because you're on the plane and the master infects key figures. It doesn't really make sense why he infects like a dad, a rock star, and a child. But then when you see it, like the snowball effect of how like that like causes everything to spread. So I'm like, oh, maybe this is where they got that plot line.
Yeah, right?
Which was kind of cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
He also has his familiar with him who is like this tall, cold, competent, bald man named Straker.
Who like all of the women in the town are kind of attracted to, which kind of freaks them out, but he's also kind of scary. And so Barlow and Straker, the minion, are opening up an antique shop. They're like, yes, we are retiring here and we will have antiques. And everybody's like, ooh, this store is not going to do well. I mean, it'll, like, when the tourists come in, but, like, they're not going to make any money.
Like, oh, no, this poor antique shop, not going to make any money.
We should go see them.
Yeah.
Straker is the only one there because Barlow, his partner, is off antiquing in Europe. You know, he's literally in the basement of the house, coming out at night, chewing on people. So people start going missing.
First is like a young boy, and shortly after his brother passes away. Then bodies start disappearing.
It just
from
basically
the morgue.
becomes let the bodies hit the floor, let the bodies hit the floor, let the bodies hit the floor. And you have different characters who are kind of noticing it, but vampires don't exist. Like,
it's just something weird that's happening.
And the boy who dies, they're like, oh yeah, no, it was like anemia, like, doesn't make any sense. And so you have Ben, you have Matt, who is a older school teacher who, like, he's a bachelor, he's lived all his life alone, he's happy, he's fine, he like enjoys his job, he loves rock and roll.
He's cute, I really enjoyed him.
Yeah, I really liked him. My favorite was Father Callahan because when you get his perspective for the first time, he has this just monologue, just like this internal dialogue with himself about how evil has changed. It's not capital E evil anymore, it's lowercase e evil. And what people come to confess about is different. And he wants, you know, one great battle. He wants to be involved. He wants to fight capital E evil. He wants to be a warrior of God. And you're reading this and you're like, oh sweetie, like, you want to be a main character in a novel.
Nah.
Well,
see,
guess what?
The interesting thing was, like, he got introduced with that monologue, but then when they come to him for help, he's like, do you really think the Catholic Church needs to be involved? I'm like, dude, this is your chance. Why are you, like, running at it?
This
he's like,
is what you want.
And he's like, a younger priest would have run at this. I'm like, why aren't you running? You just said I want to run.
And, like, finally he's like, you know what, fuck it, I'll do it. It's similar with Susan, where it's just like, I want to fight capital E evil. Hey, capital E evil is that way. Capital E evil doesn't exist anymore. Like,
you're like, oh my god, people.
then there's the boy,
Mark,
who is the most practical character in the entire novel because he loves weird comics, he loves horror. He has his collection of like all the great movie monsters.
I have a theory that he's Stephen King as a young boy.
That makes sense. What happens one night, he's in his bed and he's on the second floor and the kid who went missing is rapping on his window like, let me in. And he's just like, nope, this is a vampire. I know the protocol. He's aware that he's being compelled and like, he just handles it. And I'm like, good job, kid. Like,
well, it was really cool too because the vampire is coming for me. So he grabs like a plastic gravestone that has a little cross on it and uses that, and I was like, damn, that's smart.
I love that child.
I thought that was like the cleverest thing. I was laughing
and like,
so hard.
It's so funny because when the kid ends up meeting up with all the other adults, he's so mad at them because he's like, literally guys, like it's a vampire, these are the rules, and it's the whole like, you know, imagination with children and adults growing up and forgetting how to be
innocent and childlike.
Blah, blah, blah. And then there's Susan. And Chelsey and I have discussed Susan at length.
As we discussed many Susans at length,
yes.
apparently. So Susan is, I don't know, I feel like she's a product of her times. It's very interesting.
She's kind of like an example of the changing of times. She wants more than what is expected.
But I think she'll settle for less than she wants.
So like so like I think she's gonna push the envelope, but she's not gonna
throw the envelope out and start writing her own letter.
Yeah, she's I think early 20s. She is an artist, so she's
quite successful.
She's quite successful. She has a complicated relationship with her mother, which gets too real too fast. And she meets Ben when Ben rolls into town, and there's an instant attraction, and they kind of start seeing each other, and it's kind of cute and sweet. You root for them, even though you know that if Ben is the character at the beginning of the novel, she's not gonna make it. And so the vampire stuff starts happening, and Susan is just like, guys, there are no such thing as vampires. And so originally Ben and Co are just like, what we'll do is we'll go see Straker at his house and be like the welcome wagon and suss it out. And then more vampire stuff happens. They're like, no, we don't want to let them know that we know, we gotta hit them hard, and and Susan doing the stupidest thing in the book, but at the same time exactly what I would do. It's just like, screw it, I'm going up to that house and I'm going to find out once and for all, and I'm going to prove to Ben that there is no such thing as vampires.
Because there's no such thing as vampires, you dumb men! Like,
what are you guys doing? I know this town is boring, but
it's not vampires exciting. And it's funny because she has like an inner monologue as she's going up the hill and she's kind of like getting the feeling this is a bad idea. She's like, what am I doing? If I was watching this at the drive-in, I'd be yelling at the screen like, you stupid bitch, what are you doing? But here I am going up this hill, ready to confront the vampires, if there are vampires, but like, probably not my best idea. Oh well, I'm gonna keep going up this hill to confront the not vampires.
And so she runs into the kid and they do it together. And they run into Straker and he just like rips through them. Throws Susan into the basement, ties the kid up upstairs so that when Barlow wakes up at nighttime he'll have a snack, and like ingenuity on this kid again.
Yeah, right? Like goes into some Houdini shit.
Okay. Houdini. He would like tense up all of his muscles, right? So that like
when he tied the rope that there'd be a little bit of slack when he relaxed.
Yeah. So like he's having this just like slow methodical getting himself out of this situation, and Susan is in the basement.
Susan somehow can't get out of the basement.
And Susan gets 8.
Yep. She get it right up.
And the other character we didn't mention is Jimmy the doctor. He's kind of fun. He is the only person who gets bit in this novel and survives.
And you're like, guys, why don't you have a game plan for getting bit? Like, this guy did it. He's fine. Why aren't we not like douse ourselves in holy water and get ready to like...
Well, I mean, they do that later.
But like, they're never like have holy water ready to staunch some wounds. Like, they're just like, hey... Let's go.
So he gets bit, and he looks at it as an infection, which is kind of cool because it goes against everything that's happened in the novel to this like point. And he's like sussing around with his medical bag, like injecting shit into his neck and like
washing out the wound.
And he's like, I can fucking feel it inside me.
Not good, guys, not good. And so he like douses like holy water on his wound and cures himself.
Yeah, he makes it out. And he was the most skeptical out of all of the characters other than Susan. So that was kind of his turning point. Like, I guess I can't argue with that.
And I like the way they went about it logically too. They're like, okay, all signs point to vampires. We know vampires don't exist, but let's operate on the premise that until proven otherwise, this is a vampire because we have no other course of action. I'm like, good. You don't have to sacrifice your disbelief, but let's be real here.
Some of the encounters are, like, it's dark. I think one of my favorite was, so Matt, the teacher, he goes to a bar and he runs into one of his old students. And this student, he has an encounter with a vampire and he gets drained. And so Matt sees it like, oh man, he's on drugs. Like, it doesn't connect yet that this kid is like primed and ready to go. And so he offers this guy to come stay at his house and have a, like, sleep through the night there. And so Matt is sitting up in his room and he's listening in and he can hear the guy invite the vampire into the house. Matt has this full, like, crisis because he knows he should go into that room and he knows that he should save this guy, but he's too fucking terrified to do it. And I'm like, that's real.
Yeah, that really is real. Like, it's very much something that anyone would do. Oh my god. And I mean, I guess we kind of forgot to mention this in the non-spoiler review, and maybe we should have, but this novel can get like dark in a very real way too. Like, you've got a mother who's like beating her infant because she's probably got postpartum depression, but it's never called that. She's not in her right mind and she's hurting her child. You've got a guy who's a rapist toward
his wife.
That was disturbing as fuck. Like,
because you have this woman who is cheating on her husband with like an electrician, and then he catches her and then he rapes his wife, and you're like, wow, like, I was on your side kind of until you did that.
Yeah. Like, and on one hand I'm kind of like, okay, yeah, she's cheating on her husband. I'm like, yeah, lady, get yours. I mean, like, female sexuality, woo. And then it just way dark, way dark, way dark.
But then you also have moments of niceness. There's this widow who runs a boarding house and she's taken in this guy. His nickname is Weasel. He's an alcoholic. They used to have a thing going on ages upon ages ago, but it's not happening anymore. But she loves him enough to take care of him, and through the novel she kind of realizes that maybe her feelings for him
are stronger
than she originally thought, and it's just kind of happening in the background of the story, but it's very sweet and cute.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that little arc, and I wish those two had made it out.
They don't.
I'm sorry. And then just the sexuality in this book makes me very uncomfortable, and most of it wasn't even connected to the vampires, and you know, vampires are supposed to be dark sexual attraction, and I mean, yeah, sure, they had that, but a lot of the times it was just like the men and how they looked at the women, especially the guy who runs the dump, who's like looking at little Ruthie Crockett, and God, if you just like touch her the right way, she'd sure explode. And you're like, oh my god, this girl is like 15, like, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
Oh god, yeah. I don't know, like, all the men just seem very aware of their dicks all the time. I feel like you could make a montage of all the inappropriate Stephen King erections through his series. Like, there are definitely disturbing moments in this book. Most of them aren't even really connected to the vampire. It's mostly just the people in the town.
Like, the most disturbing thing about the vampire for me was just how freaking efficient he was.
Yeah, that was the terrifying part.
His town was doomed. One of my other favorite scenes is with Father Callahan when they go to confront the parents and they get interrupted by the vampire just because this is his moment. This is him versus capital E evil, and he is like performing.
The power of a price compels you.
But
almost,
he fails. He doesn't have like, his faith isn't in God, it's in like the object of the cross. And so when he doesn't throw down the cross,
like, the vampire's like, hey, okay, I'll let this boy go if you just toss away your cross and confront me on your own.
And he doesn't do it, and he loses
because his faith isn't strong enough.
It gets really interesting there because, like, he gets turned but he doesn't. Like, he gets marked in a way. Like, it's the whole, like, Mark of Cain kind of thing, and he gets kicked out of the town, goes off and just drinks. And supposedly he shows up in the Dark Tower and has his kind of redemption arc there, so I haven't gotten that far in the Dark Tower yet, so
The other thing I wanted to talk about was there's a couple of plot holes in this book if you're reading it. I don't know why I keep noticing plot holes these days, but somehow I'm just like, what? One of them is the mother who's harming her child. The baby in the household is the first to go, but nobody in that house ever invited the vampire in. So how did it get the baby? I mean, it came through the window, but like...
Maybe the baby smiled through it. That wasn't it. I don't know.
Yeah. Then there's also the scene where the vampire is trying to capture, like, the young boy Mark, and he crashes through the window and dashes Mark's parents together, like, so hard that they die instantly and is in the house. And it's kind of like, well, if it was the parents' house, then shouldn't the default owner be to Mark because he, like, lives there, but nobody invited him in. And apparently it was really funny because I was, like, started Googling it, and the titles of the articles I was finding on Reddit was like, this has been bothering me for 40 years. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm new to this party. Let's go, guys.
In the end, we're running around, we're fighting the vampires. They finally decide to make their final attack on the house.
Okay, let's give a count of who died.
All right, everyone.
Pretty much everyone in the town is dead at this point. The town is a ghost town. The only living people is basically like the town sheriff and like a recluse who like spies out her window and like maybe like 3 or 4 other people.
So Matt has also died of a heart attack.
Jimmy fell into a trap where this was a really clever trap. They find the vampires holed up in a new location after they sussed them out the first time, but they took away the stairs and they put like spikes at the bottom. So he's like, oh, I'm just gonna go down here and check out what's going on.
Because okay, so the vampires aren't at the Marston house anymore, but they found blue chalk. And they're like, what? I'd have blue chalk. And they have this whole discussion about how the chalk used at the school is white. And Mark and Jimmy are going around looking to like mark the vampires on a map so that during the day they can just go and exterminate them. Jimmy has this realization. He's like, blue chalk, a pool table. Where's the only pool table? In the basement of the boarding house. Let's go there. And so he goes to go down the stairs and
Jimmy ends up falling down the stairs, which the vampires cleverly took away and put spikes at the bottom so that they would catch them unaware, and Jimmy falls on the spikes and dies. And Mark manages to get out of there and inform everybody of where the vampires are, but there goes poor Jimmy.
So now we are down to Mark and Ben. And so they decide to go and face Barlow. And oh, we did not mention was that when Mark was escaping, Houdini escaping, he ends up like slashing at Straker and cutting him. And so when Barlow wakes up and he's in his feeding frenzy like a shark, and he smells the blood on Straker, it doesn't matter that Straker was the best servant he's ever had and has been loyal. It doesn't matter that Straker just failed at this one thing. Barlow falls on him because
he's bleeding.
He's bleeding, and he writes him this letter being like, you motherfuckers, he was the best servant I ever had.
And now he's dead, and it's partly my fault, and I'm really pissed, and you're all gonna pay.
That was fun. Ben and Mark decide to go and face the vampire.
I'm sorry, I'm picturing him putting Straker in a shoebox like a hamster and burning him in the backyard.
So they go and they face him, and they manage to defeat Kurt Barlow, and Kurt is just the most random vampire name. It really bugged me. Like, Straker had a legit vampire name, and he wasn't even a vampire.
This is my theory. Well, this is what I think. He's trying to sound American.
Okay.
So, like, he definitely had a Romanian name, but he's like, what sounds American and will fit me into that town? Kurt Barlow.
So they kill him. They successfully kill him. It's all, you know, violent and gory and fun and blood everywhere. And then all of the other vampires wake up and they're just like, you killed the master. And I don't know if our heroes were like, man, if we kill the one vampire, like, we're all gonna die, right? Because hive mind or whatever. And then they don't. You have to get the fuck out of Dodge.
Like, do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Go.
And they just keep going. And so the very end of the novel is them actually coming back to Salem's Lot, being like, okay, let's burn this motherfucker down. And they set the Marston house on fire, and that's like, purging the evil and
of the town.
Of the town.
They waited for the perfect day day where the fire is just right. So this fire is not only going to take down the Marston house, but it's basically going to level Salem's Lot and get rid of as many vampires as possible, all in one sweep. It's
kind of this nice circular narrative because earlier in the town's history there was a gigantic fire
that nearly destroyed the town.
I really liked it. Like,
yeah.
It was a lot of fun. It was nice to go back to just like the comforting rules and not some kind of like remix.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I mean, like, the rules are comforting, but they're kind of cliche, but this gave them some weight.
Yeah.
They didn't just feel like cheesy things you did. They had like some value to them and some like heft. It was good. It was something I probably haven't encountered before, and this is definitely like top 5 vampire novels I've ever read. That was Salem's Lot, guys. Thank you for watching our review. I guess it was pretty long. We had a lot to say about this one.
We did.
And thanks for watching, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.